A very happy new year to everyone. 2018 is finishing, 2019 is coming. May the goddess of knowledge, Mata Saraswati, bring you all the happiness to you and to your family. At the age of 45 plus and 50 and 60, and as you become old and older, one thing you get for free, you want it or you do not want it, and that is termed as maturity. And maturity says that these new years really do not change anything in your life. And these days you can take it as an excuse to celebrate, right? So let us not try to keep a lot of hardcore resolutions, because I feel personally that I'm not a person who can really follow resolutions. But one thing we can all commit is we can learn 10 to 15 minutes every day. And if you do that, and if you see after 365 days, you can feel the surge of knowledge. You can see the blessings of goddess knowledge. So let me kickstart your new year with discussing something new, with teaching something new, as well as learning from you guys. And that is arrow functions in JavaScript. So this coming 10 minutes, let us try to understand what are arrow functions. A lot of people feel that arrow functions are used, because it makes your code simpler and shorter. But I think that is not the main reason. The main reason of arrow functions is to get an automatic current context. So a lot of people, they feel that arrow functions, makes your code simpler. It makes your code more readable. But I think that is a myth. So in this whole 10 minutes video, I'm going to go and talk about that arrow functions are not just about making your code simpler, but they help you to implement something called as automatic current context. So let us get started. So what we'll do in this video is we'll first try to understand the basics of arrow function. We will try to understand the code structure of arrow function, and then we will try to understand this concept called as automatic current context. Arrow functions helps you to create anonymous methods and functions. Anonymous methods and functions means functions and methods which do not have a name. And because they do not have a name, that leads to more shorter syntaxes. For example, you can see that we have an add method here. So to create this add method, we have written an add function, we have put the curly brackets, and we have done so many things, right? So if this function, I need to go and write using arrow function, it will be something like this. I will say here, so let us go and comment this. So if I want to create an arrow function of this add method, it goes something like this. I will say here, where add is equal to round brackets and then a arrow. And inside this curly bracket, I will go and I will write my logic of my function or my method. So for example, in this case, our logic is that we want to go and add two numbers, and the parameters, the input parameters to this anonymous function, you have to write in this round bracket. So over here, we will say num1 and num2. And to invoke this arrow function, we can just say add and we can pass the parameters. So for an arrow function, the parameters are given in this round bracket, followed by this arrow symbol, and then the logic is written in the curly bracket. So if I run this application, if I run this code, you can see the value is 20, and that is perfectly right because 10 plus 10 is 20. But now the question comes is that, how is this helping us out? What is the advantage of using an arrow function? Is it that the arrow function has made our syntax a bit smaller? So is it more readable? Is it more simpler, right? So if you personally ask me, I do not feel that this arrow function code is simpler to read. This stop function which we have written is traditional, it is verbose, and anyone can understand that yes, this is an add function, it has a proper name attached to it, and I feel that this code is more readable as compared to the below code. And coming to that shorter syntaxes, I do not feel that the syntaxes have become really shorter. I feel that this code has become more complex as compared to a normal function. So the question is that, why do we need to really use anonymous function? In what are those scenarios where we need to use arrow functions? Arrow function should be used when you want to run your code inside the caller context, when you want to ensure that your code runs automatically inside the caller's context. Means what? If you look at context in JavaScript, it is very complex to understand. But let me try to explain in brief. Let us say that we go and we create some variable here called as context, and let us say that we say this is the global context, right? Now, this code at this when your UI runs, when your window runs, right, of your browser, then there is this object created globally. So there is a global context. So in other words, if I go and say alert this dot context, or I will say any code over here, any code inside this thing which is running, right? If he goes and says this dot context, he should see the value global. So in other words, if I run this, you can see now I'm seeing here global, right? So either this call is made directly in the body, or either it is made through a function. So for example, now let us say we have some function here, let us say some method, and inside this also, if I place this alert and if I call this some method, this will also show me this dot context, the global context, that is global, right? So this is so right, that basically any code which is running inside this body, either you are making a function call or either you are making a direct call, you are always accessing this global object. So everything is good till here. But if you create a new instance, if you use the new keyword and if you create a new instance, then automatically for that new instance, a different this is created. So a different context is created. In other words, if I do this, if I say where instance is equal to new some method, you can see now I'm actually creating an instance. And if I run this, you will find that it is not displaying to me global out here. So in other words, if I now go and run this, you will see that it is saying undefined. Why? Because this new keyword out here has led to creating a different instance, and for that different instance there is a different this. So at this moment there is a global this, a global context, which has this context variable, and there is an instance, a new instance which we have created, and it has a different this. So in other words, if I go and say here this dot context, and if I say local, this will display me local now. So you can see now it is showing me local. So in other words, this is different, and this is global. So if you go and do an alert here, if you call this context outside, it is global. So if I run this is the local context which is inside the function. Because of the new keyword, it has a new context, new this, and this is the global one. So you can see that the global one is still preserved. So there are two contexts at this moment. One is the global context and the other one is an instance context. So this is all good, and this is what most of the developers want. That basically there is a global context, the window object you can think about, and the time I say a new keyword, when I create a new instance, that means I have a different context altogether, right? So when you say new, there is a different context, and by default there is a global context. Now let me go ahead and complicate this. Now let us say we have one more method here saying function other method, some other method. This some other method is having alert this dot context. And let us say this some other method is called from this some method. So in other words, what we are doing out here is we are creating an instance of some method, and that instance, inside that instance, we are calling a method called as some other method. So what our expectation now here is that this dot context should display local. Why is that expectation? Because at this moment, the caller who is initiating the call of some other method is some method, and the some method is created by a new keyword. So I would like that any calls which are made through this instance, right? All of the calls, should inherit the context of this instance. But if you go and run this, you will suddenly find that things are not good. It is now accessing the global context. So in other words, what has happened is when this some method made a call to some other method, he just got his context, just got lost. And what he did is he started referring the global context, and this is confusing. So we would like to retain the context of the caller. So this is where probably you would like to have the arrow function. In other words, if you go and do something like this, if you say here where, so let us go ahead and comment this. So now let us go ahead and create an arrow function, some other method. Remember I said the arrow function needs a round bracket, and inside this we will say alert this dot context. If I now go and run this, oh, some error. Oh, we have to invoke it. You can see now I have created the arrow function, but I need to invoke it, right? So there it is, I'm invoking. So you can see now it is displaying local. So arrow functions, when you invoke an arrow function, he does not have a new instance. He does not have a this. He does not have a super. He just connects, to the caller's context. So normally if you have code, where you are explicitly binding the context, if you want to run your function inside the current context, then having an arrow function is good. For example, when this arrow function was not there in previous JavaScript versions, in previous ES versions, developers used to do something like this. So this is some other method, right? And this some other method actually runs on a global context. So what developers used to do is they used to actually go and call the bind function. They used to say bind, and then they used to say bind with this current context. So with this, now what will happen is, at this moment, even though I am calling this some other method without an arrow function, it will still bind it, because this bind method here binds it with the current context. So in case if you're writing a lot of code like this, bind, that means that you want to run in the current caller's context, and must be arrow functions are better things, right? So if I go and run this, I should see local. You can see now it is local. But if I go and if I directly run, it is not local. So if I go and directly run like this, it shows me global, right? So that's what is the essence of an arrow function. You want to run it inside the caller's context. So let us try to remove some myths. Arrow function should not be used because it makes your code simpler. That is a myth. It actually does not make your code simpler. Probably it can be complicated for people who are coming from traditional programming, right? A lot of anonymous methods, a lot of anonymous functions can lead to more unreadable code, right? So you shouldn't be using arrow functions to make your code simpler. It's not going to help you. You should use arrow functions, when you want to run your function, your code under the current context. You want to ensure that you stick to the current context. And if you personally ask me, I think you should avoid anonymous functions. You should avoid arrow functions because they can really complicate things. So I would suggest that to use the bind thing, because when you say bind, it explicitly tells that you want to run in the current context, and that looks to be more cleaner personally for me, right? So I hope that you enjoyed this video. In this video, we were trying to understand in what scenarios we should use the arrow function.